So what exactly is a kitchen garden, Nicole? I get this question a ton because I tell people when they ask me what I do, I say, well, I create kitchen gardens. And they're like, is that like a garden inside your kitchen? And I'm like, it's not. So in this video, I'm going to break it down for you and explain to you what a kitchen garden is, where the idea came from, and help you decide if you should start a kitchen garden too. All right, so welcome to Gardenary. Gardening is ordinary. That's our mission at Gardenary. And it all started about 11 years ago when I started my first garden. It was an absolute fail and it was embarrassing, but I harvested just enough things to make me love the garden, to get addicted to it in a very good way, and then to try to convince every single person in the world that they need a garden too. So my name is Nicole Burke. I'm the author of 2 books, Kitchen Garden Revival and Leaves, Roots, and Fruit. And I first started using the word kitchen garden probably around 2015. So this is when I started my first garden consulting business in Houston, Texas. So when I first started the business, I just knew I wanted to help people have gardens. And my garden is, my specialty is using raised beds and trellises to grow lots and lots of food. And so I was just telling everyone, I can help you in the garden, I can help you in the garden, I can help you with raised beds. And it was my mom actually who suggested I start using the term kitchen garden. And I was like, you know when your mom tells you something, you're like, okay, So I was like, well, let me look this up and at least pretend like I heard her. So I looked up the term, started to understand it. So kitchen gardens, the whole term originated hundreds of years ago. And the first usage of it was for farmers. So farmers would have obviously lots of land, lots of crops where they're growing things for commercial use. But then they would have their kitchen garden, and the kitchen garden would be their garden. So it would be the place right outside their home versus the farm, right, which is way far away, right outside their home, where they would go frequently every single day to pull things every single day to bring in and use in the garden for themselves. So that's one of the ways that the term first got started. Another term that's often used is kale yard in Scotland, translated as kale yard. So literally a yard full of kale would be the kitchen garden. It'd be the place that's got all these greens, all these plants that they can frequently harvest and bring inside to eat and enjoy. So the more I dug into this, the more I thought, I really like this term. I like this idea of a kitchen garden because I wasn't out to be a homesteader. I wasn't out to be a farmer. I didn't have a ton of land at the time. I was simply gardening right alongside my driveway in my backyard. And almost all of my clients, pretty much 100% of them actually, now that I think about it, in Houston all lived in the city. They're all in very urban places, very small spaces, and none of them for sure were going to be farmers or homesteaders. And I wanted to bring this idea to them of, they can be professionals, they can be busy, they can be moms, they can be, going and coming, they can be busy people, and they can still have a garden in their lives. And I wanted to use that term kitchen garden as a way to signify, this is a garden that is so useful. It's made for your everyday life. So let's talk about a few aspects of a kitchen garden that make it truly a kitchen garden. So that would separate it from probably what most people would call a vegetable garden. So before I do that, let me tell you a little story. So I started talking about kitchen garden all the time. And in 2019, I got contacted by a publisher and they said, we've been looking for an author for so long to write a book about kitchen gardens. And I was like, and so we signed a deal, and that's why I have this book called Kitchen Garden Revival. So that's where the genesis of this book came from. And then right around that time, I got contacted by Southern Living, and they did a whole big spread all about the kitchen garden too. It all came out in 2020. You may have heard of that year. It's kind of famous for this thing. I don't know if you've ever heard COVID, something like that. Anyway, people got really interested in gardening during that time, and also extremely interested in kitchen gardens. So it was a wonderful time, and everybody's interest in the garden continues to grow since then. So let's talk about a couple of things about a kitchen garden. So number one, a kitchen garden is different in its size. So a kitchen garden is not going to be huge. It's not going to span your whole yard. It's not a homestead. It doesn't take up every square inch of the space in your landscape. It just has this nice little set aside place where you're going to be growing lots of food for the kitchen. So you don't have to homestead, you don't have to have a food forest, you don't have to do permaculture, you don't have to get rid of all of your grass to have a kitchen garden. You just devote a little spot of your landscape, and that's the kitchen garden. So that's the first is the size of it. So we've made kitchen gardens that are literally a 4x4 bed, just 16 square feet. We've put them right up against the fence. We've made border kitchen gardens along the driveway. That was my first one. We've put them in bigger places, in the middle of a backyard, on the side of a backyard. We've put them in the front yard. So they're all different sizes. I would say the smallest is probably 16 square feet. The biggest is probably 1,000 square feet. And then most of them range, around the 100 to 200 square foot size. So that's the first distinction from a homestead, from a farm, from someone who's just growing in big, big rows and just canning and just killing it, just growing tons and tons of food. The size is the first distinction. The next distinction is the proximity to the home. So a vegetable garden or a farm or row croppers, they are often fine with all the garden being really far away from the house. When I first started my business, most people had that idea in their mind. So some of the husbands would walk out and they'd say, "Can you put this behind the garage? Just hide it." And that's what most people think when they think of a vegetable garden. It's this thing that needs to be far away from the house and hidden. Well, a kitchen garden is not meant to do that. It's meant to be as close to your kitchen as possible, because you'll find out in a second how we use the garden, but basically you don't want it to be a long trudge away from your back door, because that's not going to make it easy for you to get out there. So in proximity, a kitchen garden is very close as possible to the kitchen. And this matters because of frequency. That's the next thing. So for frequency for harvesting, in a row crop situation, in a farm situation, most of those crops are planted all at once, tended all at once, and harvested all at once, right? Do you ever drive by? When we lived in Chicago, I would drive by cornfields quite often, and those things would all of a sudden all be planted, and then all of a sudden all be just demolished, right? It was just, they all got harvested at once, and then they just do this massive storage with the plants. Well, a kitchen garden is not like that at all. I will come out and pick a tomato today, and then I'll come out and pick another tomato tomorrow. I'll grab a pepper, 2 peppers, 3 peppers this morning, and then I'll go out tomorrow morning and get 2 peppers again. So it's very frequently harvested from. It's very frequently used. And so that's a huge difference from a row garden, from a homestead, from a farm, where things are all kind of brought in and processed all at once. We do it a little bit at a time in the kitchen garden. And the same is true with the planting and the tending. So with a farm, with row cropping, it's all at once planting, all at once tending. But in the kitchen garden, it's a little here and a little there. So I'll pull out some plants and add some seeds to take their place. I will add some things and take other things away. And that's how you tend a kitchen garden, because the idea is a frequent and continuous harvest. So you have to plant and tend that way as well. So the kitchen garden differs from the vegetable garden and the farm by its size, by its proximity to the house, by its frequency of planting, tending, and harvesting. And then it's also going to be different from the farm or the row cropper or the homesteader with its diversity. So in a kitchen garden, we're trying to get as many different plants growing and going as possible, because we want to have all these things to bring into the kitchen. So we're not necessarily looking for like a gazillion tomatoes or a gazillion watermelon, because we're not a farm, right? We're not growing these to sell. This is not a commercial thing. And we're also not really growing to store a lot. We're growing to enjoy it right in the moment. And so we're going to plant a lot of diversity in our kitchen gardens. We're going to have herbs and greens and root crops and fruiting crops all planted together in one bed. That's what I talk about in my book, Leaves, Roots, and Fruit, combining all types of plants all together in each of our kitchen gardens. The diversity is the fourth distinction between a kitchen garden and a vegetable garden. Now I'm going to tell you my fifth distinction, and this one is just one that I basically made up, but it's about its beauty. So the kitchen garden is really set up to be a beautiful part of your landscaping. Now I'm not saying that a farm can't be beautiful or a row garden can't be beautiful, because they can, of course, but a kitchen garden is especially created to be beautiful. It's made to be a very desirable place to go to hang out, because we want you to get into that kitchen garden as often as possible. I'm on a mission to reframe the way people see vegetable gardens, and I do it by creating these beautiful kitchen gardens just like this one. So when you're creating your own kitchen garden, you do want to think about the aesthetics, because it's going to be so close to your house, so close to your kitchen, that you don't want it to, be an eyesore. Instead, you want it to be like the diamond in the rough. You want it to be the place you're most proud of. So with homesteads, with farms, with big vegetable gardens, beauty really isn't that big of a deal. It's productivity that matters most. With a kitchen garden, we're still going for productivity, but we want it to be pretty too. So those are the 5 distinctions between a kitchen garden and a vegetable garden or row garden. I'm going to read you a little section from the very beginning of my book, Kitchen Garden Revival, and then I'm going to tell you why you should choose a kitchen garden over a vegetable garden, how to know which one is right for you. So what exactly is a kitchen garden, Nicole? Is it a garden inside the kitchen? I get this question a lot. Called kale yards in Scotland and known as potagers in France. So fancy, right? A kitchen garden is a place closely connected with your kitchen in everyday life. It's a distinct area of your home and landscape where vegetables, fruits, and herbs are all grown for culinary use. A kitchen garden can be as small as a collection of garden boxes on the patio or deck, or it can be as large as a formal stone garden that covers hundreds of square feet. No matter the size, the purpose is the same: a garden that's tended regularly and used frequently in everyday meals. It's not a vegetable patch or a homestead. It's much smaller and doesn't require nearly the amount of work that those do. Unlike a farm, which is cleared all at once, planted all at once, and harvested, you guessed it, all at once, a kitchen garden is tended regularly. And different from row cropping or a big vegetable patch, a kitchen garden is a space for growing either a small sample of a wide variety of plants or a large amount of a small variety of plants. In other words, you're not going to avoid the grocery store entirely, but you will skip past certain items, which is a very good feeling, by the way. So how to know if you want a kitchen garden or if you want a vegetable garden? If you want to dig into the ground, if you want to create big row gardens, if you want to use the soil that you have and just dig right into the ground, a vegetable patch, a vegetable garden is probably going to describe what you'll create more. If you want to spend a lot of time out there, if you want to almost take on the role of being a farmer, but doing it in your yard, vegetable gardening is more your speed. If you want to grow a ton of produce, like a ton of produce, and you want to put it away, you want to can it, you want to turn it into sauce, you want to dehydrate it, then a vegetable garden is probably a better fit for what you're looking for. If you have a large space to dedicate to this and you want to dedicate a very large part of your yard, then you might want to head toward a vegetable garden or homestead. That's how to know if you are a vegetable garden person. How to know if you're a kitchen garden person. You don't have a ton of time. You want to have a garden in your life, but you don't have a lot of time to take care of it or even to set it up. Kitchen garden. You want to grow some things to enjoy in the kitchen, but you're not looking to go homesteading. You don't want to can and sauce and do all your own food production, but you do want some things from the garden to bring inside. Kitchen garden is for you. You have some space you want to dedicate to the garden, but you're not yet willing to give up all your space to it, or you're in a small space to begin with. Kitchen garden is for you. Finally, if you want to make the garden beautiful, if the aesthetics are important to you, then a kitchen garden is yours as well. So let me know in the comments which one suits your fancy, kitchen garden or vegetable garden, or are you somewhere in between? Maybe you want both. Tell me your thoughts below. As you can tell, I'm a kitchen garden girl. I love having the garden. I love having food to bring inside, but I just can't commit, at least right now at this point in my life, for the time and the space and the time inside the kitchen to have a huge vegetable garden or be a homesteader. But guess what? It takes all of us to make the world go round. And the more of us that are growing a little bit, even if it's just a little bit of our own food, that's all the better. So listen, I want to invite you to an upcoming workshop where I'll be teaching you all about the gardenary way of kitchen gardening. You can find a link to sign up for that class right below this video, and I also have a free resource to get you growing right away. That's below this video as well. You can grab my books, Kitchen Garden Revival and Leaves, Roots, and Fruit, below the video or anywhere books are sold. And come and find me online. I'd love to get a DM or message from you to find out how your garden's doing. Show me a before and after. I absolutely love seeing those, and I'd love to share those online as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of Gardenary, and I'll see you next time.